So let's imagine a tribe in the middle of Africa, and let's imagine there's, by example, an anthropologist who arrived there, and then he realizes that suddenly there is a very strange thing. He's showing to the old people in the tribe some photographs of a lion that he wants to identify. All the people over there, they can't recognize that lion. It's impossible. How it can be? Like, they've seen the lion all their lives, and now it's impossible to recognize a lion? Suddenly, he realizes that children were able to recognize the lion. So, what was happening here? Suddenly, the main thing that he realized is that all people were not able to see what was a photograph. They could not even recognize the animal inside the thing. For them, it was just a cardboard. And strangely, he realizes that there was a special relation with images. Because of the government, all of the tribe, they need to have IDs. So the chief of the tribe decided to send one guy to take photographs for all of the tribe. So suddenly, the whole tribe has just one photograph in all of their IDs.
Consider this image. It comes from a medieval bestiary from the 14th century. And it's this very strange plant that has on top of its stalk a little lamb. While the lamb is eating grass, the plant grows and the stalk grows, and then this little lamb cannot eat the grass, and it will die and will become just like a moth of hair and bones, almost like some kind of giant dandelion. This animal looks a little bit strange to us, and in a way it's almost like a surreal construction of different parts from different beings. But it also shows the way that bodies were constructed in the Middle Ages, and the idea of a world that was made by analogous correspondences between the forms of things. Things that to imagine a new being, you have to make it from parts of beings that you already knew. So one of the key discoveries in the visual world in the 18th century was the discovery of the microscope. And these are drawings from microscopes in the 18th century. And the beings that began to appear under the microscope had completely different forms. And this was shattering because it really broke that idea of an analogous world where forms correspond to each other. And then what people began to see is that the world has different degrees of complexity depending on how close you get to the things and how far away you look at them.
By example, let's think on this circumstance. There's in New Spain, in Mexico, you have all these religious figures, the Aztecs, the Zapotecs, and all these tribes had like very strong images. So when the new religion arrives, they have to be displaced. One figure had to be had to push the other one in order to occupy that space. But a very strange thing started happening. People refused to give this space to the new idol, to the new god. It was so difficult to do this, but it was imposed by the sword. So suddenly these spaces start fusing one into each other, and then these new gods start containing and literally getting like holes inside them in order to hold the old ancestor, just like balls in within balls, one world in within the other. So of course, like all the priests were so happy about their achievements, and so to have like this new religion, like and this transformation of the ideological structure of people. But in fact, what was happening is that people in there were more intelligent. They were, in the end, praying for the old ones.
This is the life cycle of the toxoplasmosis virus. And I want to talk about some research that a professor at Stanford University, Robert Sapolsky, is conducting right now that investigates this cycle. And what he has discovered is that the parasite, the toxoplasmosis parasite, when it gets into the rat's brain, begins to control it, but not in a zombie kind of way. We don't have zombie rats going around. The parasite will control just fear responses in the rat, and it will make the rat reckless. So the rat might be killed by a cat, ingested by the cat, and it is the way, it's the mechanism that the virus, that the parasite has to reproduce itself, because it can only reproduce itself inside the intestinal tract of cats. The thing that makes this interesting and perhaps related to those parasite gods inside the figures is that what he has been discovering is that the parasite also rewires the human brain when it comes inside of the human brain. And he has discovered, for example, that there is a strong correlation between serious traffic accidents, people that get into traffic accidents, for example, driving a motorcycle, and the incidence of toxoplasmosis infection in them. And that makes you think about if that recklessness, for example, was an autonomous decision, something that has to do with the will to do something, or was just a parasite acting on the brain. And if we know so little stuff about parasites, then this idea that we are completely autonomous beings separated from every other living being starts to become a little bit more doubtful.
Here is oval cup, which it's the mirror image of the placebo. It's this medicine that has been rolling around a lot of families in the States, and it's as its name give away. It's a placebo given to children that are too reckless, and strangely it works. The placebo effect, it's even more strong when you have like a brand, or when you have like a big pill, or when like it's more efficient to have like a big pill than a small pill, or it's even more efficient to have like a dark, strange pill than a clear one. It's more efficient to have like something like with a syringe rather than to ingest it. And this did give me like also like the key to think about the pentothal. The pentothal, it's this drug, which is well, it's known for being like the syrup of truth, but in fact, what it makes is like it is thought that lies are like a very complex organization in the upper part of the brain. So they realized that with the pentothal, you are able to give away this part, which is the controlling part. And it's also very, very strange, because this pentothal is the same substance that is used for the death condoms in the system of prison. So all these deaths are given away throughout this truth. And it also reminds me the idea of the golem. The golem, which is like this figure, which is like defending its own people, and it's been given life by this name, this strange word in his front head, which was Aemeth. And Aemeth means truth.
Well, one can consider truth a mere effect of things. There is this paper by an art historian, and he published it in an anthropological journal in the late 70s that was called The Origin of Image Making. And there is no image. And his thesis was that images began to appear after people just made random marks on things. For example, on pieces of bone, in a cave, in pieces of rock. And sometimes if you accumulate enough markings on a surface and you see it from a particular light, or there is some kind of light effect going on, you will see an image. And he considers that moment, which is not like a voluntary or intentional moment of representation, becomes like a revelation, where you learn that you can actually create the illusion of visuality from random marks, and it becomes like an effect of truth, but it's not. There is no intention behind that effect. So this was a very disputed theory in the late 70s, because one of the key mistakes, or that's what the critics pointed out, was that all the examples he gathered were from France and from Spain, which were traditionally considered as the first manifestations of art. But of course, modern anthropology and modern ethnography knows that there are even previous examples. So it was this was also like a truth effect, because then he wasn't considering the history of his discipline. He was blinded by his own discipline. It's like a twofold movement going on there.
Do you know, have you ever thought about that there is no color in the world? Literally, there's no color. The color is just an effect that is happening in our brains. Things are colorless. There is no possibility of the existence of color or sound or taste outside of our brain. And even this trick is like sometimes give away so evidently. For example, this image, it's just reds. There is no green in this image, and that stands because basically our brain is a machine to unfold and to give like all like it's almost like trying to give like a percentage average of what it should be. But of course, there is no possibility of having like the complete range. But we always forget that. We tend to forget like this circumstance. Do you know that there's also the impossibility of having pink as a light frequency? There's no possibility of having a pink light. And that's why in the rainbow there's no pink. The thing that happens is that you have a frequency which is in between red and a frequency which is in between the violet. And the brain realizes the difference that exists in between those, and realizes that there's a possibility of something that is not that or that, and therefore it creates this space. So it's not only that color as perception. It's in our head, but also our head creating the possibility of having frequencies in terms of particles of light appearing to the world.
In 1953, there was this sociologist that was going around Colombia. He was a Colombian sociologist, and he was trying to construct a history of Colombia's material culture. And he went all around the cities, towns, small and big. And in one of those cities, a very important colonial city called Popayán, he ran into an old communist. And this person had some pamphlets from the 1920s with constructivist paintings. The sociologist didn't know about constructivism. He wasn't interested in art, so he didn't have to know about constructivism, especially in the 1950s. But he was amazed by these paintings, and he asked this old guy, his last name was Valencia, to translate parts of this pamphlet. And he said things like this. The author states that some painters mixed up materialism with idealism and ended up making paintings that exist between a pure idea and a simple thing, perplexing whomever looks at them, thus distracting some more urgent matters. And he says, I'm sure Valencia spoke those last words with contempt. He also writes, the pamphlet had some illustrations. Valencia's ironic tone aroused my curiosity. I wanted to like those Soviet painters. I must confess, however, that I was speechless when I saw the reproduction of a painting by some Casimir Malevich. I didn't see a thing. I asked for a magnifying glass, and I just found the tenuous insinuation of a crooked square among the screen dots. There was nothing there. But why, then, does the pamphlet's author argue that these paintings are at the risk of being a mere thing? If we can see a thing, aren't we at least seeing paint? Isn't that something? I tried to discuss with Valencia, but he was very disdainful. So this is what he saw as Malevich's white on white.
You know that before the metrical system, the universal statistical metrical system, people used to measure distances, by example, by the distance of two running horses on full speed, or the sound of a cow in the valley. So you were able to measure everything depending on the things that you were using, depending on the things that you were working on. You like warriors used to measure till 1922 in some parts of Hungary, like like distances according to arrows.
I think one of the closest desires that our current civilization aspires to is a complete continuity of the visual world, where there are no interruptions between the smallest thing and the biggest thing. And we can basically see that, and I'm not going to show any images because it would be a complete contradiction. In television shows such as CSI, when someone takes a picture and begins to enhance that picture and zooms in lots of times into the smallest detail to get, for example, a license plate. And what this fantastic action that nobody can actually do in real life shows us is a desire to have like this minute clue that will give meaning to the whole image. And that is like a desire that has always been there and that it's constantly being actualized.
Well, I have this idea of basically like how can we understand the unit? By example, if I see you, who am I? What is the thing that I'm seeing? I'm seeing a body. I'm seeing some organs. Am I seeing 10 million cells? Am I seeing an infinite quantity of atoms? Where is the place that I could stand? Where is the limit that I would show? How can I realize that I'm talking to you? Where is the place that is those words coming from? So suddenly it seems like there's like the creation of scales is like this kind of like negotiation of three different things: space, time, and perception. And in between these three, they create like a layer. And this layer is just the apparition of something. Why is it that I don't have in my head something that is between like a molecule and, I don't know, a cell? What is in between? They would see like the organ of a cell. But what's in between the organ of a cell and a cell? Where is the point that I will start counting on? So it's strange because basically it seems that the unit is just a methodological particle. It seems that the reading, the way of unfolding things and the way to go through is just the apparition of this unit. Therefore, the way I read is creating certain tool, certain mechanism that is just, in the meantime, is just like a present circumstance to make something appear and therefore be able to talk.
In fact, I think what you're saying has also to do with the fact that we keep using the same, I don't know if those words are precise, probably the same cognitive structure that led to the formation of words or concepts that revolve around images, were things that come from the way we used to produce images. For example, in the whole of history, before mechanical and digital reproduction of images, we constructed a whole language around images that give us form, drawing, content, all those constellation of concepts. But now that we have other tools to construct images, it would be interesting to see how the words that are immersed in that new realm of technology could be used as metaphors to construct ideas about images. And I'm thinking specifically about the word resolution, which is something that we use very casually to talk about images in our work, or whenever we need an image in low resolution, high resolution. But the fact that these images, that this notion of resolution could be very useful, because then what makes an image complex is the density of information it has. It's not just a matter of a form that is full of content, but different density of content depending on the way that you are going to see it. If you want to see it very close, you have to have a very dense network, a very dense quantity of information. But if you want to see just like the whole the whole image from afar, you don't need that density of information. There must be like different forms of understanding the perception of image from the notion of resolution. And I insist you could use that as a metaphor.
That remind me like these drawings. There are drawings taken out from teeth from an individual, from Atapuerca. This specific guy, it's called Miguelón. And Miguelón's teeth, they're being drawn. They are not only photographed. In order to have like the complete set of information that just a single tooth can give, it is not enough to scan it. It's not enough to take photographs. It's not enough to describe it. It's really important to draw it, because anthropologists achieve a very, very strange concept, which is the intellectualization of information. That is that when anthropologists are like living in this landscape, which is the tooth, they need certain shades. Like basically, a drawing is difference of shades. So when they are living in these shades, they are in need to reinforce certain details. And therefore, the historian can arrive and can immediately go into the discourse and play with all these details. That is to say that it's been like shown. It's been it reminds me this idea of microhistory that is called the moral imagination. How can we do to recover history? They say with imagination and with the possibilities of holding a piece of, like it should be there in the moment, in the present.
But there is a paper by James Elkins that also deals with bones and marks in bones. And he was analyzing previous research done by Alexander Marshak about the markings on bones. And if you see these pictures, you see these markings in these bones, and you very reasonably might say that these are intentional markings. And nobody would dispute that. But when Marshak started researching these bones, he used microscopes and magnetic resonance units, everything that he could do to get closer, because that's metaphorically, that's the ideal way to study this kind of objects, even works of art. You have to get closer. The closer you get, the better you read the thing or whatever. That's like a metaphorical imperative, if we might say that. And so Marshak started to get closer to these drawings, and he made the drawings that you were talking about. But then there is a point, if you can imagine, those bones have circulated for 4,000 years in the world. So some of these marks are scratches, accidental scratches, and some are intentional marks. And it was, the closer he got, the more difficult it was for him to decide if a mark was intentional and had meaning, or was just an accident from just the bone getting scratched accidentally for 10,000 years. If you see it from afar, it's clear that those markings are intentional. But if you try to decipher what they say by going in closer, you can't decide. So that ideal of a really close reading is almost always also a construct.
But do you know this effect, which is called the end of history? It seems that it's related to the idea of how do we achieve our own choices, and how is there's this strange circumstance that when you choose something, it seems that the best chosen thing or object or circumstance is the best thing that you will ever choose. This is very simple when you think it in retrospective. When you see yourself in the past making choices, you always says, "My God, how could it happen? Like, it was me deciding this." For example, if I ask you, which were your favorite bands, rock bands, 15 years ago, you would say, no way. But what was happening? It seems that it was always the best choice. It seems that the history was ending all time because there was no better choice any moment. So there's a very strange tension, and there's very strange apparition of something that is called election blindness. Psychologists realize that if you trick someone in the moment they're making a choice, the people, instead of saying, wait, you are tricking me, that was not my choice was another thing, and you are doing something in this experiment that somehow is interfering with my choice, people start creating reasons. So it is not really the main thing to make a choice. The important thing is to have reasons on it. And the more you are in it, it doesn't matter what you choose in the end. So it matters how do you support it and how are you organizing this structure around it.
But the difficult part is when you think that maybe those decisions are controlled by a parasite.
And what about like this thing? It's just interference. There are two very interesting things. In visual information, you have the noise in images, and strangely, noise in images, when you apply to an image that has very low resolution, more low resolution, you diminish giving noise to an image, suddenly the image goes sharp. It's a very strange effect. And it also strangely reminds me a very strange effect on synesthesia. The thing that I'm showing you, it's a dog. It's a dog in the moment of barking. So things are just placed in a very different organization. It's just like a matter of moving the circumstance and the values of the origin and in the moment it will appear into something else. Something will create itself in this moment.
Well, I am very nearsighted, and in a way, being nearsighted is also having two possibilities of seeing the world. If I put my glasses on, I see everything very sharply, but lately I cannot see things that are close very sharply with my glasses because I'm starting to get old. But if I take my glasses off, I can see perfectly well at very short distances, while the world is completely isolated from like 2 feet around my head. And when I do that, I can see the screen dots that conform a color image in a book, for example. And when I see that screen there, I see that like a fundamental instability of images, because an image is just a collection of screens that superimpose each other, of different surfaces that are always clashing with one another. I had an old professor in the university that made us do this brutal exercise that was to describe abstract monochrome paintings by writing. And it was really brutal exercise, because what do you describe in a monochrome painting? How can you describe it beyond saying it's red, yellow, blue? How do you describe a surface? And we know that it became like a real ordeal to do that. So the only way is to describe accidents, and that's the noise that you were talking about.
That reminds me this story of a house. It's a house that it's just in the middle of the fjords, and it reminds me also like this house, which is constructed in the style of the Nordic way of constructing a house, but with a very strange move. like the guy who made it built, he just changed the orientation of the ceiling. So suddenly, like this very traditional type of construction was seen as foreign, was seen like what is this house? And this house, just because of the way the ceiling was placed in relation to the whole town, it created like a very, very strange gap. It's also people start saying, but this is Austria. So suddenly, just because of like placing like a ceiling, you were in a different place. It was not a fjord. It was not Scholden. Then suddenly it was Austria.
You know about Viollet Leduc, this architect from the 19th century. He was like one of the most famous restorers in the world. And he actually did the restoration of Notre Dame. And he was very obsessed with detail. And he wanted to make Notre Dame like a more Gothic cathedral than it ever was. And to the end, at the end of his days, he wrote this very large treatise on the Mont Blanc Massif, that mountain in France, and he wanted to restore Mont Blanc to its initial state. So here is the proposal. He wanted to demolish this upper part, and so it becomes more like a mountain. He felt that Mont Blanc was like a wall, so it had to become more like a mountain. And he proposed to demolish that upper part of the Mont Blanc.
That reminds me also the story of André Breton arriving into Mexico. He arrives and he was so happy there, and he was asked to give a lecture. And so he said, like, well, the only thing that I need is like a really nice table. So he's strange. He arrived to like a carpenter, a furniture guy, and he draw like in a little paper, like just a really nice table, but in perspective. Just drew like you would draw like, bump, bump, bump. He gave it to the carpenter, and 1 week later he arrives to pick up his table. And suddenly he realized that it was a very strange thing, a very strange object he received. It was like a table with this size, a monstrous size, and the other size, a very, very, very small side. So like, what is this? And the guy said to him, that's what you wanted. That's your drawing.
Well, since that last example made me speechless, I want to talk about this fetish that is now all the rage in Japan, and it's called eyeball licking. And it's exactly what you see in that image. But what I find fascinating beyond beyond Japanese fetishes that are always fascinating is that the two most accultured organs in the human body, the eye and the tongue, are used in ways that they are that they're rendered useless for their cultural purposes. While the tongue is licking the eye, the tongue cannot speak and the eye cannot see. And there's just like two surfaces feeling each other, two surfaces that are never feeling each other. The eye never feels the tongue, and the tongue never feels the eye.
Well, there is a very, very, very amazing experiment that in the University of Maryland that they are doing. They're starting making. They take like rats. They connect a circuit into the rat's brain, and they start like monitoring what's the rat brain activity while teaching the rat to be fed by a simple mechanism. So the rats start like pushing a little thing, and then they start realizing how to tell the rat how to push this thing, and the decoding and the system, and let's say like the dictionary of all these little impulses, just like creating like a certain basic words to tell just by a computer. But suddenly there was another more complicated experiment. They realized that if we are connecting a rat to a computer, why not just to tell the rat to tell another brain what is happening? So they realized the next experiment. They took this rat and they connected through a computer, and this computer was connected to the internet, and from the internet it went into another rat in Natal in Brazil, and they connected the rat. So basically you have two connected rats by the brain, and this rat needed to tell the other rat in Brazil how to push the buttons in order to both receive like a price of it. So suddenly you have like no boundaries in between these two rats. It was 70% percentage of like a good response, that both the rats start realizing that they could communicate just in the moment. The scientists told like a very nice story. They say it is difficult to achieve such a thing because the rat is used to use his own brain with the impulses and the feedback that it receives from reality. So the rat has to be trained to trust an information that is coming from nowhere, that's reality. And in the moment that the rat realizes, there's a click, and then suddenly they start communicating and controlling in between two rats.
So there is this clock that made a terrible noise the whole time, and this guy couldn't stand that noise. So he asked the guy who sold the clock to take it back, because he didn't like that clock, because he wanted a clock that was silent. This was in the 1940s. And the guy said, that's impossible, sir. I cannot get you a clock that will make no noise. So the guy goes away. It was just before the Second World War. And then, 10 years later, the owner of the store receives this clock that is glassed in, that is sandwiched in glass, and it's silent.